cannot invent and pioneer if you cannot accept failure.
We wanted people that were insanely great at what they did.
Nobody was making any money at all. Most people thought the internet was going to be a fad.
Jim Hartman, I'm so excited to have you here. You have been my role model for a number of years now. And you have been building it. You have literally been telling us stories about how you are launching things. And we have been observing 3 streams of your line of work. So the first one was, of course, Growth Hit, the agency. The second one was One Day Design. And the third one was Handsome Chaos, which is unfortunately still on red to these days.
Exactly.
But anyways, I just wanted to hear a little bit of your intro, because you have helped hundreds and more companies to succeed in go-to-market strategies. So what's your traction there? How have you been tackling this?
Oh, thank you so much for that amazing words. And love what you're doing. I mean, it's so fun just to compare notes. But yeah, so been in the game for a little while. We've had Growth Hit now for almost 6 years, a growth marketing agency. Worked with over 150 companies. Before that, I worked at startups. I couldn't code, so that means you're a marketer. So I was a marketer. And even before that, worked in finance, looked at spreadsheets as an investment banker. But it's been so fun to kind of go down that entrepreneurial path as an agency owner, working with founders looking to grow things. And then from there, was able to write a book on growth marketing, just sharing what we've learned. But then also, if we're such a good growth team, why can't we grow our own stuff? And that was the whole spirit of the growth of the startup studio. And so we did that with One Day Design, as you mentioned, which is a productized service doing design that we've gotten to 6 figures. The goal is 7 figures. So we're a 10th of the way there. And then trying to do with our D2C brand, an e-commerce company, Handsome Chaos, which we think we're good at marketing. We're learning we're not good at manufacturing. But the goal is, to be honest and very candid, to be a growth team, an agency that only works with clients where we own the product or we're a joint venture in owning the product.
Maybe we could double down on some of your partnerships as well, because you have been in Techstars, you have been in Sephora, and just like observing all these startups and their go-to-market ideas from accelerators. What would you say are the common pitfalls? What do you think are the common traps where people are thinking about go-to-market strategies?
Yeah, I super fortunate to work with founders significantly smarter than me through like Techstars, WeWork Labs, Sephora Ventures, XRC Labs, like a bunch of different venture firms and startup studios, and did courses through LinkedIn and stuff. And it's so interesting, you work with a lot of smart people that are looking to grow something, and you have the stats on the reasons why companies fail, but what I see is it's usually very common, and it's so simple. It's like, one, they're not truly solving a problem, or if they're making something, they don't really understand their customer. And when I say customer for early stage companies, I'm talking about like, who are those early adopters who, regardless of how maybe ugly or hairy or not perfect your thing is, it's solving a problem. So they will go after and love it. And they want to bypass that because it's hard. By the way, I want to bypass it. It's the hardest part. And you want to do the fun stuff. You want to grow. But the more you just like sink your heels into like, okay, are we actually solving a problem? Do people care enough to give money? And are we relentlessly focused on that? It's like the most obvious advice, but it is so true. And that's something that I see time and time and again. You can see other issues with founders not getting along, running out of money, and other reasons why these companies don't succeed or make it. But to be honest, at the end of the day, it's, do they truly have that traction around understanding a customer and solving a problem?
Well, I'm blown away right now, because just today I was watching the video from Ryan from the Capitalism that I think I met through you. And that was exactly his rave as well. So he was all about like building an audience before you ever build the product. Try to cater the product to the audience. And let's just continue by maybe you applying this wisdom of yours into how you went and go ahead to develop this hands-on chaos strategy, meaning like all the learnings, everything what you have seen. How did you tackle this when you were doing it yourself?
Yeah. So there's a startup studio out here in Seattle where I am called Pioneer Square Labs. And there's one also in Miami, Atomic VC. And they have an interesting framework where when they pitch ideas, they don't pitch ideas. They pitch problems to solve and then want to come up with a business to solve it. So don't ever say you have an idea like, what problem am I going to solve? So we took that in mind. So the problem was, and these can be real problems like ending hunger, or they can be silly problems. And ours might be kind of silly. We're like, I'm a dude with longer hair. My hair gets oily. I've been stealing my wife's dry shampoo. I hate putting powdered sugar on my hair. So it's like, there has to be something better for a dumb guy like me. So I was like, I want a pomade that won't make my hair look like oily. So there's a problem. I'm a market of one. My next question is, do other dudes or people have this problem? So I literally ran a poll through a survey tool. I think I spent like $1,200 to talk to basically 1,000 people over a certain age, over a certain income level, and be like, hey, is this a problem? 1, 2, would you pay money to solve it? And 3, would you switch from another brand to use ours? We got enough signals that over 70% of people were like, yes, it's a problem. And yes, I'd pay money to see if you could solve it. So I'm like, game one, we will keep testing this idea. We then ran ads to a real website with a fake product to see if we could sell it. We sold like 50 of it at a very good cost per acquisition. We're like, okay, that's another signal that we have something. We then built a wait list of 1,000 people. Now, go to present day, we're trying to actually make the product. After 14 iterations, because I'm horrible at manufacturing products, we found something that I actually use every day. And so I'm like, okay, we like this. Now it's about, let's go to market. And we can talk about the go-to-market strategy that we're employing that we've done with some other brands. And it starts with 2 things that I think are so important, but are very undervalued. And the first thing is, when you look at your personas, who are they from one simple framework, and that how do you speak to them? There's this really cool framework from Derek Halpern who talks about there's these 3 personas. You have your early adopters who are the informed buyer. So when you talk to them, they're switching because they're informed and use somebody else. So you sell them on features and benefits. The second example is someone who's afflicted. They have a problem, but they can't solve it. So when you talk to them, it's problem solution. Those 2 personas are your early adopters and fast followers. Start with them. If you get to like an A level of round of funding and you're going to the mainstream, then we have the third persona of oblivious person where they have a problem but don't know it and they're not informed. So we just need to get their attention. So all the messaging we're doing is problem solution format or switching structure. And so we can get into examples of that. So that's step 1. Step 2 is we need to give people a reason to activate today. Like give them an irresistible offer. Alex Hormozi writes about this phenomenally well with his irresistible offer formula. And there's this idea of 4 traits of it. What's your dream outcome? If you use this product, what problem it solves? What do you become? 2 is likelihood of this happening. 3rd is time delay gratification, which plays a big part in one-day design, which we'll talk about. And then the 4th is level or effort needed to pull this off. Because here's the thing, how many times do you see like a cool idea with a cool website and a cool product where you're like, oh, maybe one day I'll buy that, and you never do? Versus the last time you saw something and you might have been on your phone, but you still made it happen. You're like, I can't pass this by. And spend more time on that. A lot of people are like, oh, we'll just like launch it and the product's so amazing, everyone's going to just hand us money. It's like, no, like really engineer a reason for the skeptical person to buy. So those are 2 things that even before doing like a go-to-market strategy, I'm thinking through that as the anchor, because then we can get into tactics and channels we want to do. But if you understand your persona, you know how to talk to them and you know how to activate them, you become a lethal weapon as a marketer to be able to deploy those on different channels and tactics that will evolve and change over time.
Gosh, I love this, Jim. I just have this instance on Monday, a friend of mine, and I launched this like kind of a online cohort, like kind of a online course, and with a single Facebook post in a group of 8,000 people, we managed to make 21,000 euros with
Oh
a
my
single
gosh.
post within 11 hours. But here is what we did beforehand. We posted 4 value posts, and these value posts were exactly what you were anticipating. So it was how to double your income, how to get clients from abroad, should you have like online presence before you start freelancing. It was just like so on point with the pain points of the persona. And when we launched this, people said to us, they stopped the car to read this. One girl took some money from her savings for the apartment to pay for the program. Like people pay within 5 minutes. It was insane. Like I was just like watching and say, gosh, like something had to be right here. So just like my point of view here is that whenever you kind of figure it out, this persona language and everything, you can influence it. You can work your way into like transitioning from these different personas by just like being active. This was literally the lessons that I learned this week.
Oh my gosh, that's phenomenal. And the fact that the other thing worth calling out is that you went into a community, you went where these early adopters would be, you speak their language, and you give them a reason to activate. Because I think that can be hard too, because with ads not being as efficient and things getting harder, you have to get creative and go where the people are.
And deliver before you ever ask for a return. This has always been my guiding principles, just like give before you take.
Yes. Oh yeah, totally. And you're probably pretty active in that community before you make this post, right? I assume there's some like goodwill that's being built there.
Hopefully. I like to think that. Not quoting Jesus here, but anyways.
Yeah.
Yeah, that has been like a really, really interesting example in my practice, which I am very grateful for. But maybe the same could be applied for your one-day designs, because I have been extremely impressed after hearing you and Jonathan speak about all this traction that has been going on. I think it can like only get better because it's such a good service to get something which is conversion rate optimization tested through the night. So you were explaining before the handsome chaos philosophy, but how was it different when you didn't have this physical cost to a product and all this like backlog of production? How did you tackle the go-to-market strategy for one-day design?
Yeah, it's a great question, contrasting D2C, direct-to-consumer versus B2B companies, because the economics are very different. With Handsome Cast, the product's $30. As we look at growth, we have to look at scalable channels. We care about referrals, virality, cost per acquisition, because we have to be very efficient with the budget. Whereas in the B2B world, like Rob Sobers, he's a CMO of Varonis, he has this framework where it's called easy mode. Being in B2B is playing in easy mode, because you know where the people are, their wallets are open, they have bigger budgets, and your margins can be a lot better. So, as we're thinking through like one-day design and go-to-market strategy there, first, like what are your options for growth? Really, there's 4, right? You can grow through virality, you can grow organically, you can pay for growth, or you can find a partner channel, right? And so with those in mind, usually when you're starting out, you just need one to work. So we'll get into those options, but kind of going back to that framework of like 1, who's the persona, and 2, what's the offer? The persona, we're still figuring that out, to be very candid. Is it someone that's starting a website from scratch that needs it in one day? Or is it an established company that wants to use us like a design team or person that can do a lot of work? We can also do it by tech stack, Shopify tech stack, or Webflow. So we're still figuring that out, 1, but 2, the offer. This was one where we were so obsessed with nailing the offer, we just put it in the name, like one-day design, right?
That was brilliant. I've been sending this to like dozens of people.
Oh, amazing. Yeah, because the worst thing that can happen when you launch something is people don't remember, So if it's funny, the name either means nothing. You could be like Lululemon or Google. It means nothing. Or it can mean everything. Like MicroAcquire just rebranded to acquire.com. That's insane that they own that. That's amazing. And so we leaned into let's own it. So we had the offer down. And so for our channels for getting traction, very dissimilar to D2C, where we needed to be more scalable and work with those unit economics. Our margins are much better here. It's not as scalable as a D2C brand, but we're selling things for $1,300, $5,000, $10,000 a month. So we were able to do a little bit more sales and marketing. So one big thing was content marketing, building in public. Whenever we launched on Product Hunt and Indie Hackers and with our email list, we already kind of knew where people were and we went to them and told them about it. Another one is doing a mini podcast tour, going to these small groups just to let them know that it exists. Another thing that we've done is, really figure out where is their demand creation, or like, do you need to focus on demand creation versus demand capture? And from a demand capture standpoint, we could definitely look at Google, or there's a million people posting jobs every day that need websites, that need a designer. We crawl the web looking for those, and then we can reach out to them to see if that's a fit. Again, these are things that, will they scale? I'm not sure, we'll see. But in the early days, it's what we can do to get to 6 figures before we have to think through getting to 7 figures. So that's, it's knowing that we have different unit economics from B to C with this B2B company. So it allows us to do more scrappy things, maybe involve sales more, because the margins allow for it. But as we kind of get bigger, I'm looking to balance more scalable things, but that's always the balance of what's scalable versus what's more scrappy, and how you juggle the two of those at the different inflection points of growth.
I love it. And here, I think it is all about the stages, right? Because at one of your podcasts, I cannot recall, but there was a founder, I think it was ConvertKit, but somebody was selling like DMs on Twitter, probably personally. And I was like literally taken away from that because I have a friend who was developer there and they seemed like quite a big company to me. So I was like, what are they doing? I mean, how can these interfere? It's all about the stages. On the other hand, I have a bunch of friends who developed like a WordPress plugin or like some sort of themes or something like that. And they had this bot on Twitter. Then whenever like somebody mentioned something, they would be, hey, why don't you check this and that? So that was kind of automated. So I don't know if there is like a fine nuances between the stages and things that don't scale. It seems to be very messy.
I know. And I think there's like 2 things, like if you're starting something, you just get overwhelmed because you have all these ideas, but you don't have the time or money to pull them all off. So I think of like 2 ideas. One is what's scalable and what's not scalable. And then 2, what is repeatable where, hey, if this works, it can be an always on channel versus what is like a one-time marketing moment or growth event. Because the most impressive founders that we've worked with that have done amazing things have one thing in common. They are experts at making noise in the sense that every month they're doing something that make people know about the brand or what they're doing. And that could be a product launch. It could be a partnership or collaboration. It could be getting access to a partner channel. You're an app, all of a sudden you're like on the Shopify marketplace or on the new Slack marketplace. You could be picking a fight with an incumbent. You could be writing a trend. And it's founders that like each month, like, okay, what are we doing to make noise? If you can take that and then bundle on, we're getting really good at paid, we're getting really good at SEO, we're getting really good at content marketing. Those are the companies that I'm most impressed by. And then, one thing, you're exactly right with Nathan Barry at ConvertKit. Because I asked him, I'm like, why are you DMing people? He's like, it's what got us here. He's like, I never want to lose that hustle to just sit back and like let other people do the scalable things. You always want to do those little things because it might not have a 10x return. It could just be a 10% return, but you're always pushing that boulder forward. So it's something that we whenever we were doing our growth planning, we published this on Twitter where we show our always on growth tactics. And then for the year, what we think are like our 4 to 5 marketing moments that we're going to try and create. So yeah, that's something that we're trying to balance.
Amazing. And just like the story about building your personal brand, I have so much admiration for you for being consistent. Because yesterday I talked with head of growth at Foreo. This is like a sonic brush for the face. It's a very nice product from Sweden. It's a very cool gadget. And he has like established this wonderful concept of never lose the momentum. If you just disappear for 2 months or 3 months or something like that, or if you are only launching once a a year instead of every quarter or something like that, you're gone. People who pledge to love you will just suddenly disappear. I mean, in this world is as if it would be all about creating this sense of novelty and to what I loved it. And this is something that I really, 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 really will pull from another sphere here. But GS1 Global said that their main goal is to stay relevant. So top of the mind question for me is how to stay relevant, how to stay top of the mind, how to always be in a spotlight.
Oh my gosh, it's such a good question, and one that we're trying to figure out the formula on, because I think there's two things there. One is consistency, just because I totally agree. If all of a sudden you go away, people are like, oh wait, like, if you go away then come back, people kind of lose a little bit of the love, and they kind of forget.
Or they even like blame you for it, right? Because they kind of develop a habit and then you abandon them.
Yeah, because I think like Harry Dry with Marketing Examples does a phenomenal job with his content, but he kind of went away for a while, and you kind of like, he's come back now, but it's, a little bit of the love lost. You lose some of the summer fling love. It's like, oh, okay, that was then. So for one, I think it's finding that consistency and what can be the byproduct of your work, which for us, that's why like we like to build in public kind of framework for content, because we're already trying to build this stuff and then we just easily share it out there, right? And that's also figuring out what works for you. Like the newsletter is kind of easy for us because it's a roundup. We do podcasts because audio is easier than having to look at a blank page and write a blog post. So that's one thing, consistency and a frictionless medium. The second thing that I kind of struggle with, but it's what is your unique take on things, where if everyone's looking at the same thing, what's your unique perspective? Or what's your angle? Because you don't want to just be like everybody else and do these roundups. How can you have a take where like, oh, I want the science-backed approach to this, I'm going to go look at Thomas. Or I want like the bootstrappers approach to this, I'm going to go look at, Rob Walling and how they think about it. And so if you can get those two things, one, consistency, and two, that unique take or your perspective, and it doesn't have to be groundbreaking, it can be a few shifts in the other direction of looking at it from this angle. And then it's just figuring out how can you like kind of unleash it. And also we're big fans of, can you batch work stuff? Like whenever I schedule content, I try and schedule it for 2 weeks, just because crazy things happen. You have a week where you can't do stuff, and that can kind of save you. But it's tough, right? It's tough to always be relevant, always be topical, and know what's going on.
It's very interesting from two different perspectives. The first one is that we should be like very conscious, very purposeful about the content. So whenever we are recording something like today, maybe we can have like 14 snippets out of this. Maybe we can have 20 statuses. Who knows? We'll see what we can get here. But nevertheless, it's also a stress. And there's also like addiction to social media and just this immersive amount of cortisol that is flowing throughout our brain, like our self-identity being dependent on the amount of likes that we get. And it's kind of a psychological trap as well. So for very intelligent people like you, like some of my mentees, I always say that like, just try to be distant from it, like be consistent, but never, ever, ever validate your personal worth through the number of likes that you'll have, and never feel like enslaved through the platform, because people are always like this and that. We should be doing this. We should be commenting 5 posts before we ever post and something like that. And I'm just being realistic. Life happens. We don't have the bandwidth. It's not like even ROI worth it to do something all the time. So I'm just trying to find this delicate balance between what we supposed to be doing versus what's realistic for us.
Yeah, and comparison's dangerous too, because you look at this person or that person, like, oh my gosh, they're 10x bigger than me, or like, man, they're doing such cool things and I'm not there. And comparison's so dangerous. Everybody's on their own path at their own speed. As long as you're having momentum and getting better, I think that's really important. And I agree, because I also it's like, what's the main metric? Because we're trying to build companies, but we can get obsessed with like, oh, are we like growing the podcast or the newsletter at the right pace? Like, yes, that's important, but that should be secondary to the overall goal. And also, Sometimes I'll be on those. I've tried to delete them from my phone at times.
Well.
I
I
actually
even
just
sorry, I even convinced my husband to put me on a children's mode on iPhone.
nice. Yeah. I know. I like give my wife the phone at dinner because she's like, you needed a break. I'm like, you're right. Take this horrible thing away. But and if you can, I've been better. Granted, we're 3 weeks, 2 weeks into the year, but trying to block time of this is time for consuming content. This is time for creating content. And this is time for work and thinking. Because I think transition costs can be really hard when you're doing a lot of different things. So trying to have themes for days and time of day to do things. So that's something that I'm trying to be aware of as well.
I think that we can come down to a theory that we probably both know. It's maker's time and manager's time, right?
Oh,
I
yeah.
did realize that those slots have to be a little longer for me, because sometimes it literally takes me 1 hour to just like get to a thing, not to produce anything, but just like to kind of fire my brain around.
Oh yeah, I need to walk around the
working.
house and snack in the kitchen and kind of like daydream before I can like get into that mode. Whereas I feel my business partner Jonathan, he's a light switch. He'll just like switch like, all right, it is time to create. I wish I had his robot energy sometimes, but I take a little bit more easing in and out of those phases.
Sorry, what's the sport that he's training?
Oh, jujitsu.
Jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Maybe that's the thing. Maybe that's the thing.
Exactly.
Tim Ferriss does it as well.
He is. I'm a huge fan of James Clear and habits and systems, and Jonathan is the next level at that. That's how he runs his life, which on the surface level that could look very boring, but the truth is by having systems and structure, it actually allows for a lot of freedom and openness as you get busier in life. Oh, nice. Impressive.
I know it sounds boring, but once you get a little bit of clarity and just like permission, I think this permission not to overwhelm yourselves and not to be like absorbed with everything what you should be doing, but like picking the priorities and whatnots, that's the will to freedom. But anyways, before we get too philosophical, let's return back to the go-to-market strategies. And maybe you could walk us through some of the common patterns that you see throughout business model, because at Growth Hit, for example, you are helping SaaS businesses, e-com businesses, you have like a bunch of different models, and just like from a get-go, and if you maybe recall traction model, like traction channels, what do you think are these nuances between optimal go-to-market strategies and different business models that are existing out there?
Yeah. So with like, your go-to-market strategy, after you're understanding your persona and your offer, it's really like asking yourself, where do we maybe have some momentum, or where do we have to create momentum? Because usually when I'm seeing people go from like a seed round to an A round of growth, it's literally on the back of one, maybe two channels. And so how can you be great at one rather than kind of half decent at a bunch of them? And those channels can take different shapes and forms, right? You've got people that were phenomenal at direct response marketing on Facebook and in Instagram. And there's still some companies that do very well there. They're usually having a high average order value, so they have room in the margins for CAC. There's another company called Return Home that's literally doing human composting that has an insane short form video organic content strategy. They're getting millions of views on TikTok, building up brand to get all this PR that's trickling into them building their business. And they've gone all in on that. But as you have these things that get momentum, they're going to plateau to some extent. And then you need to decide, okay, let me layer on these other channels, because we see it whenever, like we have one company, worked with them. This is in the consumer space. They were doing 300K in sales. We just hit 2 million in sales, all on the back of paid. They've done some great stuff with influencers, but there's a little bit of plateau in growth rate. It's time to now layer on another channel or another way to get people. And it's looking at partner channels for one. It's looking at building a community as two. Three, it's looking at what are collaborations we can do with other people with big followings, and they're looking at investing in SEO. And so it's really figuring out what is the right point for that. Even like talking to Rob Sobers at Varonis, I mean, they got to 25 million on the back of sales, but then they plateaued, and he's like, that's when we got really good at SEO, and then at ABM and paid marketing. And so it's really being aware of what channel can you ride, and usually you're not squeezing enough out of it, but then it needs to flip, and then you need to like layer on these other ones. Because even when companies are spending under 50K a month, a lot of times it's like, don't do more than 2 channels. If anything, just do one and do it phenomenally well. But it's easier said than done, I think, whenever you're a founder that wants to do everything.
Yeah, let's role play for a sec, because I'm sure that you know the scenario. So I'm a potential founder, and I come to you a little bit overwhelmed, a little bit neurotic. And I say, Jim, I would like to have SEO. I would like to have Facebook advertising. I would like to have TikTok viral. I would like to have this and this and that, like everything that I know. How much would it cost me, and when can we start? How would you manage me? How would you align my expectations of this shiny object syndrome that I should be doing everything?
You're giving me PTSD on these sales calls. So I want to diagnose 2 things. The first thing I'm diagnosing is, are you even ready for growth? And do you even have traction? And
yes,
to
I
get
want.
what's that? Yeah, right. And so, because too many times people want it all, but I'm like, you're not even ready to grow. And that's when I try and like diagnose it by being like, okay, tell me about traffic volume, tell me about your conversion rate. If it's e-commerce for a purchase, based on your average order value. If it's a B2B company, what's the lead sign up rate, and then your close rate. And if there are issues there, I'm like, pump the brakes. You're about to pour good money after something that's going to end very badly, because we will just accelerate your failure. And so that's something that we're trying to diagnose. But say there is traction. I'm like, all right, you have stuff that's working. Let me get into the numbers and see what's working that is somewhat effortless or that comes easy. Because my guess is you're not squeezing enough out of that. And so that's something that we'll start to understand, like, oh, wow, is paid kind of working? Organic's working. You're amazing at PR, or you have a partner channel. And then how can we amplify that or optimize that to a certain extent? And so with, a lot of consumer companies, there's 2 options, and everyone loves the new darling. I think TikTok organic is really impressive, but to do paid there and for it to give you the direct ROI like Meta, Facebook, Instagram, it's just not there yet. It'll probably change by the time this maybe publishes, but your first 50K that you're spending on paid is probably going to be in Meta or Google, and you want to do those phenomenally well before you start to test other ones. Should you be looking at like SEO and organic? You'll be happy you did it in 12 months to plant those seeds, but we all know that's a long-term play, not a short-term play. And like, what are those opportunities? If you're creating a new category and you want to own it, like with Return Home, they want to own Terramation, go all in on that. But if you're launching another digital marketing agency or another fashion brand, and you're trying to go after like comfy jeans, it's going to be a knife fight. Is that worth it? Right. So really trying to understand what is that ROI potential on these channels. So those are things that I'm trying to look through. 1, do you have product market fit? 2, where do you have momentum, and where can we be phenomenally well at this phase of growth before we like layer on these other things? And then based on your type of product. So if you're an e-commerce product that's doing fast fashion that have a lot of drops of products, oh my gosh, please be world-class at email automation, marketing, and SMS. If you're more of an acquisition product, if you're selling mattresses, email is important, but not as important. But if you're a high retention product, go all in on it. Email is also important if you have a high average order value over $300, $500, because it won't be an impulse purchase. You're going to need email to push them down that decision journey, address those objections, and hopefully get them to convert.
Alrighty, cool. You calm me down a little bit. But as a founder, I have another crazy idea. So I would like to create a viral growth hack that would skyrocket my business in a month, preferably. And like whenever we are calling it growth, there might be these stories about like carries or drop boxes or whatnot. So I have all inflated expectations to go viral. Handle me.
Yes. Well, first, like, love it. Let's do it. But let's change how we think about it. Don't think of one campaign that we're putting all of our eggs in a basket where it's hit or miss. Change your mind and be like, hey, let's think of 10 ideas, knowing that 9 of them will fail and hopefully 1 of them will work. So let's create a safe space right now where it's okay to fail. So it's like that. That's like step 1. The second is, let's think of a spectrum for going viral of what are your options and how much it's going to cost you. Obviously, we all want to make that viral video like Dollar Shave Club and go for it. Don't use my dollars to do it, but go for it and try and make that happen. And that could be amazing. The other way to think about it is, okay, how do we go viral? A lot of times it's getting word of mouth marketing, which is referrals. To get a referral, you're only as good as the incentive that you put out there. And so one way to think through how much you can spend on its incentive is like, what is your ideal cost per acquisition? So we've seen it like with PayPal, like they went viral because they were just giving people money to create a PayPal account. They were burning $1 million a day, but their retention was so strong, their LTV was so strong, they could do that.
Yeah, and
so
also referral,
people,
like it's happening with ChatGPT. Sorry for interrupting, but like most of the time I'm trying to access it, it's down.
Oh, it's down because it costs so much for all of those queries. But like when you have an amazing product like that, your product is your best marketing. Give it away for free and it goes viral, right? Similar like with Robinhood, whenever they launched on the back of stock trading for free, they didn't have to do any marketing because the product did it for them. If you're an e-commerce company, you can do that as well. Like Girlfriend Collective, they gave away their leggings that are $90 to people. But if you think about it, that cost per acquisition with their costs of the product, it's still under $30, which isn't horrible. But it's just taking that CAC instead of giving Facebook, Instagram, Meta $30 to acquire somebody. Let's do it in a new creative way. And you mentioned Harry's, their incentives for their referral program was phenomenal, giving blades away, giving a shave set away for, 50 or 25 referrals. So it's like, okay, let's think outside the box. What is our ceiling of cost per acquisition? Is it $30? Is it $300? And I'll take that. What are creative ways to apply that? Giving the product away from free, paying people, because the Harry's examples and the Robinhood examples are fun to look at, but we can't just copy those because everyone's tried that and people are numb to it. We have to get innovative with new variations of that. So it's like, okay, we look at our spectrum of options. We know what our cost is to potentially acquire somebody with this. Now let's think of 10 ideas, knowing that 9 will fail. And let's see how we can drip them out there and see how it works. Like we did one with a wine company where we did this epic giveaway to a chateau that got us like 50,000 signups in 30 days. But that was after 4 tests. We did one with the neobank.
Yeah, the next time you're doing one, just send the link over, okay?
Awesome. Yeah. Get you to the chateau. We did one with the neobank where we just did weekly giveaways of $250. And to enter the giveaway, you had to refer a friend. And all of a sudden we got to almost like 70,000 signups. And that's not that exciting, but it's just like the way in which we kind of laid it out. But there's different ways to think about trying to go viral, but you also don't want to get caught in the trap of we go viral and we got all these people, but none of them are potential customers, because eventually you want them to be able to give you money for your product.
To be honest, I anticipated an entirely different answer. I thought that you would just like be killing these ideas, but that's literally like the geniosity of it when like marketing good old playbook, how we are doing things. Of course, it's rational. Of course, it's like a spreadsheet, but the nuance, the genius part of it comes when you are innovative. And sometimes like people even struggle to find that within themselves, within their product, because like the majority of people, if you just like look at their work schedules, they are like on 80% reactive basis. They are on meetings, they are doing reporting, they have to firefight, and there is very little bandwidth, mental capacity left for this type of work that you are describing right now. Do you have from your practice any good exploration technique of how to bring those ideas out, how to get people to think bigger about this, not just like through an Excel spreadsheet?
Oh my gosh, this is such a good question. And it's funny, I've changed, because if you would ask me that same question on virality like 2 years ago, I probably would have been like, we need repeatable and scalable tactics. But like I said, like, yes, you need those, but the companies get this breakout success, they do these one-off things, they do these stunts that really work. And so it's all about creativity. That's why like innovation teams and research teams are so coveted at these big brands. If you look at the Fortune 500 list, changes over time, like 80% of the companies have dropped off. And the reason for that is you get too big, you stagnate because there's no innovation and creativity. You could argue like creativity is the most important thing. So how do you come up with creative ideas? There's a whole framework on, I'm actually going to get someone on the podcast, Will Hughes, that does a mastermind in this. And a framework that he gives is you need to look at things differently from everybody else. So to think differently, think of it one way where what is overvalued right now, what is undervalued, right? And he did this study of direct-to-consumer brands where what was overvalued was paying too much for these ad agencies. What's undervalued is people aren't paying enough for phenomenal copywriting, right? So that's one example of it. And so if you can ask like, okay, what's undervalued, what's overvalued, what is everybody doing? How can we zig when people are zagging? What are the actual numbers we could use to acquire people? And what are like 20 crazy ways to, think differently? I also think as marketers, we put these frameworks in place, which are great, but they're also limiting. Bring in someone from customer service, bring in a musician, bring in a graphic designer, and just throw the idea at them. They might totally flop and you're like, all right, see you later. Or they could open your mind to something totally different. And so getting exposure to things like that and like removing those frameworks can be helpful.
I remember this episode from oh my God, I will sound like literally your most fanatic fan, but this was the episode which was aired before the New Year's, right? And you were talking about this immersive thinking, about aggressive timelines and whatnots. And that came super handy as I was like working on my New Year's resolutions and something, because like, just this notion of achieving something in a year, I mean, it's blurry. And also the same with marketing and growth planning. If you have the job to do like a yearly budget, it's like, here are our events. Maybe like this is Valentine's Day. This is this and that holiday. I mean, it gets really, really, really rigid. But I love how this brings an additional spice to it, just a little bit of more innovation and edge, because nevertheless we are trying to differentiate ourselves from competitors, right? And if everybody is thinking the same way, our only superpower could be to think differently.
No, exactly right. And it's good to do the planning. I think I need to be better at it, and that's what we're trying to do. And that's how you get the 10% gain. But if you can also think through how do we get a 10x gain, that's where we have to just think differently. Like, how do we like shortcut these goals? And so it's baking time and like feeding your mind with things that could open that up is super important. And it's not talked about because it's a little woo-woo, it's a little intangible, but I think it can be impactful.
And these are parallel processes. As you are trying to get better in business, you have to become like a better human being, for the lack of the cheesiest word. But really, these things are parallel.
Oh yeah, absolutely. They kind of feed into themselves, because you've got to get your health right, your mind right, and then all those things can kind of be set up to succeed. Because if not, it's just you're doomed, you could say.
Fantastic. So once we are on positive spiral, here is my next mental challenge for you. So imagine that I invented this awesome kit together. So here is a candle and here is a candle ninja. This is the lighter, right? And in order to light the candle, this is a very good experience for me. I'm not burning my fingers. So I lit a candle without like being burned, which is fantastic. The job to be done here is, if I was a founder pitching this candle lightener thingy to you, how would we solve it? How would we make $1 million business out of this stupid gadget?
So do we have electricity? I need a little, or do we have electricity, or we just have candles and we've been maybe lighting them with matches and burning ourselves?
Exactly.
Okay, gotcha. So the way to think about this is, I want to go with the framework of, first, how do we position it? Maybe this is category creation, as we look at the 22 Immutable Laws of Marketing, Chapter 2, category creation. So it's not about talking about our brand. We're not trying to get people to switch from our lighter to another. We're trying to elevate this category in general. So to elevate a category, you want to talk about use cases. You want to talk about something you're solving in day-to-day life, right? And so that's one thing that I'm thinking through is like, okay, how do we do that? So it's coming up the right.
I have already tackled it. So I'm meditating and I'm very ecologically friendly. So I definitely want to burn all my candles to the ground. And if I would like be doing it with traditional fire thingy, I would burn myself. But with this baby, I can actually touch it and burn the most of the candle.
Oh, I love. Okay, so you've nailed the position, you've nailed the persona. We're going to do a thunderclap of a launch. And so first, we're going to do one of two things. We're either going to do cold emails to like 300 to 500 micro influencers, all in that persona that you said. We're going to give them the product for free, and then we're going to go on all the podcasts, and we're going to have it all time around the same like 35-day window of launch. If we're lucky, we can get one that has over 1 million followers, similar like the Bala shoes launch. They did 1.5 million in sales in 5 days on the back of this strategy. So that's one thing. The second thing is we are going to take a crack at trying to go viral with some like epic referral mechanism, because these lighters are going to run out. Maybe people need to subscribe. We give it to you for free if you subscribe for 2 to 3 days. So boom, we've got that. We're going to overinvest in copywriting an amazing asset that we can amplify on paid channels. Hey, we're going to even launch a community with all these influencers we're reaching out to around our maybe it's meditation or movement in the dark or whatever that could be. And so we kind of make this thunderclap around all of this. So hopefully that gets us to like 2 to 5 million. Then maybe we need to raise a little bit of money to do some inventory management, get some sophisticated systems. We graduate from generalist to specialist, and then we're off to the races on diversifying into channels. But I think, yeah, you could get to that first mid 7 figures on the back of that strategy.
I love it. And meanwhile, when you were talking this, I got like another idea. So we could bundle it with candles. We could offer this in different colors to add different.
Oh,
like,
you nailed
rooms.
it. New colors.
Should definitely have like candles and new colors thingies to fit each and every one of the candle enthusiasts' life. And the candles, by the way, have an amazing margin. Also on Amazon and whatnot. These are like high budget products and I love them.
Totally, yeah. And if people fall in love with the brand, they'll get a lot. Because the other thing that's interesting with a lot of consumer companies, what is the flagship product or the gateway product where once you get them in, they're hooked? With a lot of fashion brands, it's jeans and pants. If you get them to know their size with the pants and jeans, all the other things are an easy cross sell, because the jeans are kind of the anchor and the hardest thing. So or once I love the product, like with Halo Top, it's then rolling out 1 million different crazy new flavors. So they're always trying and testing different ones.
Awesome. So we can also sell soap and just like home fragrances.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So maybe you should like pivot from Handsome Chaos into the candle company that I just pitched.
Yeah. The thing that's fun too, it's like, if you can, I love it when brands can just own a persona and speak to them specifically rather trying to be everything to everyone.
Chaos, like you are coming beautifully from yourself. That was one genius use case.
Well, we'll see if we can launch it. But yeah, that's what I love, because even like agencies that do that well, that's like, hey, are you like a SaaS business owner that's doing this amount of revenue? Like, we're the right agency for you. I'm like, oh man, that's so cool. They can be that narrow and focused. So yeah, that's so exciting when you can nail that.
Awesome. Whew. Jim, for the last question, I saved something that will resonate beautifully to your studies, and these are the metrics. So we were talking about millions, we were hyping like how everything can be achieved, but what are the metrics to be measured? For example, if I go and I invest 2 million into my candle company that will only make 1 million, boy, I'm in trouble. So what would be a good set of metrics for a go-to-market strategies? What would you observe? What do you observe when you are helping these companies?
Yeah, I mean, for us, we're really trying to understand their core unit economics. It's like, okay, how much is the product? What's the expected lifetime value over a year or even 90 days? Because we do 90 days because, understanding the return on cash is very important for people that are somewhat cash constrained. So I want to know that. That way, as we start to do marketing, we can see if we're going to be in the green or the red. And so what that means is if your product's $30 costs $5 to make. Okay, our CAC ceiling will be like $15. Okay, good to go. Those are the parameters. And that's just on one purchase. But if they're going to make 3 purchases in 90 days, okay, we're going to make $90. The room could go up to $40 or $50. And it could go up more as you expand on the LTV. So once you have those guardrails for your unit economics for cost per acquisition and overall ROI based off LTV, then you can start playing the game of marketing and deciding what you want to do short term and long term. Obviously, companies that have raised a lot of money can play a little bit differently with their games, whereas people that are more bootstrapped or cash constrained. But those are truly the core of what I'm thinking through is LTV over 90 days and cost per acquisition to drive almost everything. I'm definitely looking at before I'm really investing in growth, if it's an e-commerce site, your conversion rate, if your average order value is over $80 or $100, I want it to be over 2%. As you get over $300, it could dip below that a little bit, especially if you're doing a lot of paid ads. But I really want to keep those healthy because as those go down, it can just spiral out of control.
That was very insightful. What about if you are opening a new channel or a new market? Are there any like thumbs up metrics that you are seeing, maybe like for a viral video that engagement would be like 10% or something like that? Are there any indicators before that makes you feel good?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of times I'd even take it a tad further as like we'll build up a wait list to see like, do we have traction there? Or even like waitlist for a product or even try and pre-sell it to see if there's some demand there just to test it. Because we had some companies that would launch brick and mortar locations and they do big launches and they're trying to build a waitlist for the launch to kind of signal when it's ready. But those are some things that I'm thinking through.
Fantastic. So Jean, thank you so much for taking the time. I have no idea where this is going to be published, if ever. But just to say to you, like you have been like this North Star on my journey. There wasn't a single week that's passed by without me sending your podcast to at least 3 other different people. Thanks for giving us all this amazing content. And it's my pleasure. It's my privilege to observe you on this journey. Thank you so much. And hope to talk to you again in a year or so.
Yeah, whenever. We got to make this an ongoing thing, but I can't thank you enough for first the support and two, like the stuff we've done with Growth Hackers. It's been so fun to kind of collaborate in different ways, and what you're doing is super impressive as well. But thank you. And yeah, I think we'll find some ways to get this content out here. I'm excited for you to send me the video over.
Or maybe we can co-invest in a candle company.
There we go. Yeah. I'm clearly not good at manufacturing, so if you can figure that out.
No worries. I live next to Italy. It's fine. We got this covered.
Yeah. Perfect.
Thank you so much. And good day too.
Cool. Thank you, Maja.